The morning of May 7, 2025, dawned like any other in the volatile region of Kashmir. The snow-capped peaks stood sentinel over a fragile peace, but by midday, the skies were filled with the roar of fighter jets and the terrifying shriek of incoming missiles. India had launched Operation Sindoor, a series of airstrikes targeting what they claimed were terrorist camps deep inside Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This was no surgical strike. The Indian government claimed to have used precision munitions to minimize civilian casualties, but the images coming out of Muzaffarabad, where a mosque seminary lay in ruins, told a different story. Pakistan's response was swift and furious. Dubbed Operation Bunyanun Marsus, their military launched counterstrikes targeting Indian military installations along the line of control. Fatah-1 missiles, a cornerstone of Pakistan's arsenal, were unleashed, along with sorties by their Chinese-made J-10C fighter jets. The skies over Kashmir, once a symbol of hope for peace, were now crisscrossed with deadly contrails. The world held its breath, fearing a wider conflict between these two nuclear-armed neighbors. The initial strikes were just the beginning. What followed were days of intense cross-border shelling, turning the line of control into a scene reminiscent of a bygone era of warfare. Villages on both sides were reduced to rubble. Schools, hospitals, and homes were not spared. The human cost of this latest chapter in the India-Pakistan conflict was mounting with each passing hour. India claimed that Operation Sindoor was a necessary response to a horrific terrorist attack on April 22 in Pahalgam. 25 Indian tourists and one Nepalese national were killed in that attack, pushing tensions between the two countries to a boiling point. They insisted that their targets were carefully selected to avoid civilian casualties. However, Pakistan painted a very different picture, accusing India of deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure. They released images of hospitals overflowing with the injured and homes reduced to rubble. Pakistan, in turn, claimed that their retaliatory strikes under Operation Bunyanun Marsus were focused solely on military targets. They asserted that they had successfully neutralized several Indian artillery positions and airfields. India, however, disputed these claims, accusing Pakistan of spreading disinformation. They insisted that their air defense systems had intercepted most of the incoming missiles. The fog of war, thick with propaganda and conflicting narratives, made it difficult to discern the truth. Both sides claimed victory. Both sides accused the other of war crimes. But one thing was undeniable. Innocent civilians were bearing the brunt of this conflict. The international community watched with growing alarm as the situation in Kashmir escalated. The specter of a nuclear confrontation loomed large. Urgent calls for restraint poured in from world leaders. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session, but their pleas for de-escalation fell on deaf ears. China, a close ally of Pakistan, urged both sides to exercise restraint but stopped short of condemning India's actions. The United States, caught in a diplomatic tightrope walk, found itself in a familiar position. While acknowledging India's right to defend itself, the US also stressed the need for dialogue and de-escalation. Secretary of State Marco Rubio offered to mediate between the two sides, but his offer was met with skepticism. Neither India nor Pakistan seemed willing to back down. The conflict had far-reaching consequences, sending shockwaves through the global economy. Stock markets tumbled, and oil prices surged as investors feared a wider conflict. The fragile peace that had held for decades in the region seemed to be crumbling. The recent flare-up in Kashmir is just the latest chapter in a long and bloody conflict. For over 7 decades, India and Pakistan have been locked in a bitter dispute over this mountainous region. Both countries claim Kashmir in its entirety, and their rivalry has led to 3 full-blown wars and countless skirmishes. The line of control, a heavily militarized and disputed border, has become a symbol of their animosity. The recent conflict, with its missile exchanges and civilian casualties, is a stark reminder of the volatile nature of the Kashmir dispute. It has also highlighted the failure of diplomacy and the lack of international pressure to find a lasting solution. The people of Kashmir, caught in the crossfire of this enduring conflict, continue to pay the price for the mistakes of the past. The road ahead seems fraught with danger. The risk of miscalculation remains high, and the potential for this conflict to escalate further is a chilling reality. Unless both sides can find a way to come to the negotiating table and engage in meaningful dialogue, the shadow of Kashmir will continue to darken the future of the Indian subcontinent.